Welcome to the Roundtable Consult. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Williams, and I'm joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, attorney Sonia Madison. Sonia.
Good morning. How are you? I was just gonna wait for all the compliments and glowing.
And there aren't many of them.
to the end.
Keep waiting, keep waiting, keep waiting.
Well, how are you enjoying this week?
I am enjoying the week wonderfully. I got to come to Columbus to visit my son and his wife in their new house. They're new homeowners now. And it's interesting. We as we're going through, and which is I think really goes with our topic today. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at the community and how you got neighbors. You start to know your new neighbors and what's the interaction with them. And so we're up here in Columbus, Ohio. Excited to be able to spend some time with them. They also have Rib Fest going on this week. And so, or this weekend, today is Rib Fest. So we'll have to get out and enjoy some of the ribs up here in Columbus, Ohio. How about yourself? How's the weather?
I was in I was going to ask you, how did they enjoy this house buying process? Because I've been seeing a lot in the news about people of the, I guess, between 25 and 35 are getting out there, having a hard time with some of these interest rates and the cost of house. But how did your son appreciate that process?
They actually was pretty good for them, I guess. I mean, of course, as I was mentioning to some things, mentioning to him about a couple of things. I was looking at something. I was showing him something on the exterior of the house. I said, "You're probably going to have to paint your shutters here in a while." He's like, "Yeah, that was something that was brought up on an inspection." I said, "You should have negotiated to have them take care of that." He was like, "Yeah, but there were 4 other offers." I was like, "Oh yeah, this is a whole different environment now from what I'm used to." Because when it's a buyer's market, you start thinking like, okay, well, I can get the seller to do this and this, and fix all these things up, so I don't have to do it myself. But when they purchased, obviously it was pretty much a seller's market at that point, and I think it still is. Well, no, it's probably becoming a buyer's market now because it's. I think the increase in the interest rates have simply made it a little bit more challenging to purchase a house. People were buying houses before sight unseen. $30,000 over asking price. It was crazy because the interest rates.
Depends on your perspective on the benefit, because I still think it's a seller's market just because the cost of these houses are still high. And while they are coming down a little bit just because of, like you said, the interest rates, they're still high. I mean,
Yeah.
You, at least here in Atlanta, a 2-bedroom shack could be $500,000.
Well, I wish it were that way in Xenia, Ohio, because I'm trying to sell a piece of property that we sell a house that we just really recently renovated and put on the market. And I'm like, come on, people in Xenia, Ohio, if you're looking for a beautiful 5-bedroom house, we got it for you. Hit us up here on Facebook. You can even come to us on the Roundtable Consult, and I will send you the link. But it's interesting because my brother is a contractor in Cincinnati, and so he and I have engaged in several fix and flips projects, and we got into this one that we got this house, 29 square foot house. It's a 2,900 square foot house, beautiful house, but man, it took a lot of money to get that thing renovated. And now that it's renovated and completed,
carpenters. So.
Oh my! I need to unload this house. I need to unload it. Motivated seller right now, so it doesn't feel like a seller's. What I'm saying is, it doesn't feel like a seller's market to me right now because I'm having to go down and down on the price here, and so.
Well, hopefully you didn't start too high.
I probably did, but I needed to start that in order to make some money from it, but. In a couple of months, I'll just be like, can I just break even and get out from under it? So, but we did have some good economic news over the past couple of weeks. Inflation seems to be curving, and the unemployment rate is still ungodly low for this length of time, which is really confounding a lot of the economists and everything now. It's because nobody expected us to not go into full-on recession by now. And I know you can't really blame or credit a president for it, but anytime you have somebody in office and the economy tanks, they take the blame for it. So
Except
you know,
President Trump, apparently, but
he don't take the blame for anything whatsoever.
well, since you asked me about my week, the weather was up and down, and that was pretty much the week, up and down.
So were you up and down?
Well, and especially this news cycle. I mean, it's hard to. I feel like back during your generation, because I hear you guys talk about this all.
You go back to
One set of news, and you ride that one little talk piece for a good week or two, and here you barely watch the talk piece for 30 minutes before something else pops up in the news. But you had Marjorie Taylor Greene showing nude pics of Hunter Biden on the Capitol, which, well, I guess we're going there now.
You're right.
You got Carlee Russell and this whole kidnapping hoax or alleged hoax, because
alleged hoax, but we'll have to see what happens with that.
See, it's
a whole nother Jesse Smollett thing all over again, huh?
Yeah, he was charged and convicted, so we can say, yeah, that one was a hoax. So this one, I doubt that they would go there. Just giving, I mean, I know she was in her 20s and the like, but just giving the situation is a little different. But nonetheless, I hate the aftermath.
So tell me, what was the whole story behind that? So this is a young woman who just happened to be walking on the street and saw some kid allegedly. Is that right?
The alleged. So it was alleged that she was driving, and I guess she saw a kid or some kind of toddler, and she stops, goes to the toddler, and it is alleged that from there she was kidnapped. And then came the firestorm of let's get people involved to go on search efforts, because they say a lot, and I do watch a lot of crime documentaries, and hopefully that will not be used against me to try to convict me of something I didn't do. But because apparently she had some searches that she did that people are using against her. But anyway, so allegedly from that point on, you've got a lot of organizations that get involved, because they say after that first day it becomes less likely that you're going to find the person alive. So that first day is usually the day that people really try to attack and do really try to go find her. Well, she at some point turns up on her bare feet walking to her parents' house. And from there, I think the police they've made a statement saying that they haven't been able to find any evidence that there was a toddler or a kid or a baby of some sort along the street. They're not. They talked about some of the searches that they saw her do. Apparently she was searching the movie Taken. She was searching if an Amber Alert is a charge, like a monetary charge to do an Amber Alert. I mean, all sorts of crazy. There's now her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend is coming out and saying they were having some issues and she might have been doing this for attention. So, but again, what concerns me more so is now there's, and I think to some degree it's a narrative that people are making that may not have been the case, but nonetheless it's out there. So now we got to talk about it. The narrative that now Black women
have to talk about it now.
Yeah, we have to, because I mean it's crazy. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of missing Black women out there. And so to suggest that you can't believe a Black woman and not just a woman, but a Black woman anymore it's ludicrous. But nonetheless, that's been the narrative that's now going through social media.
Well, they found her. Am I correct that they found her wallet, cell phone, and her wig or something like that on the ground?
Man, I mean keep
even the wig.
Talk about just when you absorb 30 minutes later, there's more news. But so yes, that may have been that may have happened as well.
Oh wow, that's unfortunate because but Karen, you were saying some of the other crazy things going on in the news.
Then we got a country music artist talking about lynching in one of his songs. I think the video is an actual scene from I guess a historic place where a lot of lynching occurred, and he's claiming, oh, I didn't know anything about it. I'm just talking about the pride.
Right. Don't try that. Try that in a what does it say? Try that in a small town.
Yeah, right. Like, we don't know what that means. And it's like, no, that's just Black people being paranoid. Oh, really?
Yeah, that's BLM. It was really targeted at BLM. Try that in a small town. That's what they're really trying to say. I'm like, okay, really? Come on now.
you had another country music getting off, going off on some members in her audience for taking a selfie. Now, I will say, initially when I heard that story, I was like, oh, okay, really? In the middle of a concert, it'd be like, you really that pressed that someone's going to turn around and just take a quick snap? But then when I saw the picture and they were actually standing up, it was a crowd and someone else was taking their picture. I was like, oh, that does seem like a little bit much during a slow song at a country concert. I don't know.
Yeah, lost their mind to this. You know, it was, and I'm curious, but because when I saw Fantasia, she was like, "Now put your cameras away," and yeah, so her angle was, you know, so that you can actually enjoy the show. And you know, you came here, don't share it. And I'm wondering what the motivation of it really is. And I suspect some of it is that you don't want people live streaming your show when they should have bought a ticket if they wanted to see it. And I guess the other, and I don't know if there's another aspect behind it. It's like, listen, you come to see me, focus on me, and you know, your whole attention needs to be on me. I need to be the center of attention. I don't know what the motivation is behind the objection to having people with their cell phones out like that. What the true motive behind it is, and I think it's probably a little bit of both of that. Some of it is probably egotism, and the rest of it is probably monetary, I guess.
I remember at one point Dave Chappelle tried to collect the phones before we get to, yeah. I mean,
they do that now. They do that. And you go to some of these comedy clubs, the small comedy clubs and everything, they'll actually put your cell phone in these little containers or so.
Yeah.
And where you can't even have your cell phone on you. It's like, yeah, okay. I'll put it in there, but I'm not locking this sucker. When it goes off, I need to answer.
I could understand if someone's trying to stream the whole event. I think that is a little disrespectful and too much. But now, just a picture, you know, that I don't know. But that's what I said. Initially I was like, oh, they just turn around and taking a picture. I mean, come on. But now I if there's, you know, there being a disruption to try to take a picture while you're singing, like the performance, and that might be a little too much.
It is a little, I think it is a little disrespectful to get up from in the middle of somebody singing and just start walking away too. That's the other part.
Because someone posted the picture and she is singing while the 5 or 6 of these girlfriends are standing up taking their picture. So I mean that was a little different. And then you have DeSantis talking about, okay, we're going to teach kids that slavery benefited the slaves because they were able to create a skill or special skill that they could use for their benefit. So that's where we're going now with how we're teaching history over in Florida. You know? Oh my God. But some good news. One, Trump may be indicted for a 3rd time. We're going to see how that plays out.
I don't know if it makes a difference. It probably doesn't make a difference at all.
It makes a difference in his push for his campaign. Because then I think he already realizes if I don't win, I'm getting indicted.
Or I'm getting convicted. On one of these things.
But right, this is more of a DOJ because you know he the New York, and he can't stop the states, and you know he's got an indictment over in New York, and I know he's got one going on in Florida that's probably more federal a little bit, but it's probably got some state implications as well. But this one would really be federal. If the Department of Justice is investigating him on how he tried to pretty much remain in power despite getting voted out, and they find some evidence, you know, if he gets in office, I'd imagine he'd try to slow down or disrupt or end any DOJ investigation into him. Mm-hmm. Whereas,
or pardon himself.
Yeah. Right. Go ahead and do it. And I'll say, yeah, I did it. Here's my pardon. And
yeah. But you know what? There's no objection of his supporters for even the prospect of that. And they're even asking some of the other Republican candidates, would you consider pardoning Donald Trump? And you're like, are you serious? Now, what would their response be if Joe Biden even entertained the notion of preemptively pardoning Hunter Biden?
Or better yet, Obama. I mean, that would really be an outcry, right?
I mean, but there are no potential charges against Obama. But I mean, the point is, it's like, what if he tried to preemptively pardon anybody at this point, especially a family member? They would lose their minds. And I don't know. It's just I'm so tired of.
They should, and that's why, to your point, the hypocrisy is deafening because
it's not even shocking anymore. It's expected. Like, let's see what the new level of hypocrisy is today.
Well, and to your point, I think DeSantis, wasn't it him doing the town hall with Jake Trapper, and he asked them that, and he one kept saying, well, I feel like the Democrats are using this to weaponize campaigns, weaponize against political and whatever's going on with the Republicans. Like, really, you mean to tell me that if someone has evidence of wrongdoing, you're going to twist that to, oh, you're just weaponizing? I mean,
And the most vindictive person of all, you want to elect president, and you think that he wouldn't weaponize and hasn't tried to weaponize the government, the DOJ, even while he was in office? Come on now, really? The hypocrisy is not even it's not even funny anymore. It's actually kind of disgusting.
And I think they asked Pence about it as well. And again, he's like, first of all, I wouldn't call it an insurrection. So, well, what, really? We're not even going to call it what it was anymore?
Mr. Roboto.
And then he's like, I just feel like it's time for us to move on. And if we do it, the country get healed. And it's just like, wow.
Yeah, it's a nightmare out there. But these are the people who we call our neighbors, our friends, our relatives, who actually have totally lost their mind. And unfortunately, that's the state that we're in right now, is that you just don't know where people are these days, and how odd and strange some of their beliefs are. Actually, when I was thinking about the story that you talked about earlier with the lady who allegedly staged the fake abduction thing.
Yeah.
When that first happened, it occurred to me because there was I remember riding just maybe a couple months ago, I was riding down this back road near my house, toward my house, and there was this little toddler just walking on the street. And fortunately, a police officer when I rode past, a police officer had seen the kid. He was out there by himself, maybe couldn't have been older than 4 years old. The police officer had the child at that point, but I'm like, there were no parents, no adults anywhere around. And I'm wondering, what would you do in that situation? And, at least when it first came out, it was thought that this child was used as bait to, someone using their own child, or maybe even an abducted child, using that child as bait to be able to lure somebody else, another adult, into a trap. And you start wondering, like, what would you do in that situation? We were also going down another road that headed to Courtney's school. It was a game or something. Unfortunately, we were running kind of late. We weren't really late, but we knew that we had stopped to help this guy on the side of the road, that we would have been a little bit late. And I was like, you're not even gonna help this old man? And Dries was driving, so she's like, we got someplace to be. Somebody else stop, look at him. And so
threw your wife under the bus, isn't that great?
But as a woman, I wouldn't. These are things that I don't think about. As a woman, how quickly are you going to stop and offer somebody assistance? And these are the things that, in the past we would consider neighborly things to do, but now you do these neighborly things. I think there was a recent story in the news where somebody actually pulled over to help someone who was stranded on the road, and then they got kidnapped by that person. It was all staged. It was all a setup to use as bait to be able to kidnap people and to sell them into sex slavery or hold them for ransom or whatever it may be. You can't even take an act of kindness, not even those directed at children, without taking a risk of endangering your own life, because it could be a setup for you. That's, to me, is shocking that this is where we are now as a society, and you can't even be neighborly anymore to do the neighborly things.
Well, it's fun. It's interesting that you bring that up, and I guess it's tying into our topic about community, because we do have a lot of, from a legal standpoint, there are a lot of Good Samaritan laws out there in hopes of protecting people that do feel compelled to help someone when there's an emergency or they feel like someone's at risk. I will say, definitely as a woman, and not just as a woman, but also as a woman in this generation that we are living, or in the current times, you do tend to run away from harm versus going into it in hopes of helping someone. Because it's not even just a total situation. If I imagine seeing someone getting robbed or beat, No, I'm probably not going to jump in. And it's not just as much so what am I going to do against the gun? But also because, we're kind of in a time where there's just such a level of distrust among people right now. And
Mhm.
so, there's this thing, and I'd even imagine, even when we're talking about politics, where we're asking, hey, how can we help others, when a lot of times the policy is, no, you help yourself. You be able to be in a position to do what you can do for yourself, and you don't worry about the other person. And if the other person is oppressed, or the other person has certain obstacles, that's their problem. But and even in that, there's this whole thinking that even on those circumstances, they should be able to make it. So then don't help them. They'll just ride out and be even more successful because they've pushed through despite the obstacles, instead of the mentality that, hey, listen, no person is able to advance or progress without help. And I don't care if that help comes from by virtue of you being raised in a privileged family, or raised with two parents, or raised in a certain economic status, or you're able to attend a certain schools. No matter what, there is help along the way that enables you to do better. Instead of this whole concept that everyone does successful on their own and doesn't need anyone in order to be successful. So yeah, I think that's where we are.
Yeah, I sit back and I look just even over my own path, how many people were placed in my path who extended themselves to help me really get to whatever level of success I've achieved. But people don't extend themselves like that anymore. It seems to me that it's been much more, I get mine, you get yours, you stay in your silo, I'll stay in my silo, and us four and no more, that whole mentality. I remember BLM came under great attack because they were saying they're trying to destroy the nuclear family, because they said they believe, but one of their central tenets or statements was that they don't believe that the Western interpretation of the nuclear family is necessarily a prescription for all or the ideal. And the context of that was that they believed the African proverb that it takes a village to raise a family. And so when they took that, people took that and used that to criticize BLM by saying they're trying to destroy it. No, they're trying to expand the family to say we need to be community and not just we need to be a community and not just our own particular families, and be concerned only about what happens to me and my kids. I remember growing up, this is one of the funniest stories though, but it's not a funny story. It was just something funny to witness. But literally one of our neighbors, one of our friends got whooped in the middle of the street by my father. How you gonna whoop somebody else's kid he whooped him good too, in the middle of the street, public. It was like, yeah, I know I ain't your daddy, but you came down here doing something that you shouldn't have been doing. I'm gonna whoop your butt right here on the spot. And so there's something to be said about that. I think what would be said about that today is that you don't have a right to put your hand on my child. And truth of the matter is, from a legal standpoint, you don't have a right to do that. But we should at least feel like we should be enabled or empowered to hold each other accountable as a community. And at that time, it was everybody on that street knew that, if I saw your kid doing something wrong, I had the authority, and not only the authority, but the responsibility or the expectation that I would correct that child. Now, if you correct your child, you're liable to wind up getting into a fight with the parents. You can't even correct a child in school without the parents coming up to the school and saying, what you tell my child to be quiet for? And really? Your child was cussing me out. You should have let him.
It's interesting that you say, because I do feel like as the Black community, and to me, there are some bad things about it and there's some good things about it, but I do feel like we hold each other accountable a lot more so than people in the white community or people in perhaps other communities. And I say that to say, again, it's not necessarily good, it's not necessarily bad. But when you look at this Carlee Russell situation, or you look at the Jonathan Majors, when it's a bad situation happening, we are quick to be like, man, this is what I'm talking about. This is why blind, or I can't believe someone did this. And it's just a wildfire of man, you make that one mistake, that is going to haunt you, carry with you. It is going to be harder for you to get back on those back on the track, because so many people are holding you accountable for that mistake. Even as it relates to successes. I mean, you look at the Venus and Serena, or you look at LeBron. I mean, we galvanize, we really do push them up on, you know, on the success pedestal, and helping them continue to do well, in the hopes that, hey, if you do it, maybe someone else can similarly, by working hard, achieve that same level of success. So, I mean, again, I say it's a good, but it's also a bad thing, because we also so critical when they do wrong, that it's hard for them to then similarly get back up out of that, because we are stuck on it when they do the wrong. And even with this Carlee Russell situation, I doubt she'll ever be able to come out from that. Now, that isn't to say she won't be able to move on, but this is a stain. And I'd imagine her parents, I'd imagine people that really cared about her are also not only extremely disappointed, but going to hold her to what she did and what she caused. So on that standpoint, yeah, I do feel like it's a little different in the white community, because again, you see the Kevin Spaceys, you see so many instances where, yes, that person has been called for child molestation, or Rudy Harrison. Yes, this person has been doing this, but yet they can still be able to make money by directing, or still be able to be successful. Harvey Weinstein, another good example, still successful despite all the allegations that are against them. They get a lot more second chances in that front. So, and I hate that we sometimes have to bring in race, but I do think there's a difference there. But nonetheless, there's also that question as to whether the community should be more so involved, or people should just stay to what's happening in their household and not, you know, try to overextend yourself, because to some degree people consider that as, oh, now you're judgment. You're that. It's kind of like when they talk about evangelical sometimes, and rightfully so, as well as, you know, they're not all the same. But when you're so focused on, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this, versus helping, mentoring, and actually creating spaces to ensure that person is successful or has opportunities to do well, then, you know, you end up, for that person that you're trying to minister to, or that person that you're trying to quote unquote help, you end up giving them more of a bad taste, because one, they feel like you're not only looking at me as bad without even me, you know, doing anything. You're already harping on all the bad stuff without encouraging any of the good stuff. But also now I feel like, you know, I can't do anything right because all you're doing is focusing on my wrong.
Yeah, well, I mean, that even goes even to the church for that matter, because I mean, how should the church be ready to restore some people? Now we criticize the church for even trying to restore people, and that's what's supposed to happen. I think it's Galatians 6:1 that says that if any among you sin or are caught in a transgression, that you who are spiritual should restore him in the spirit of gentleness. And then he tells us further to go ahead and keep watch on yourself, lest you also be tempted by it. And so but this is one of the things that we don't like to do too often, is that, I mean, if you make a mistake, that's when you really need community. I mean, a lot of times we only want to have community when we get to share in all of the successes and sharing all of the positive accomplishments. But when you are really struggling, and when you really made a boo-boo and you really screwed up, that's when you really need that community to come around you, not to coddle you, not to ignore the wrong that you've done, but to help you transition from that standpoint of transgression and help to restore you to a point of dignity. I don't know that there is there an opportunity for restoration now?
Well, one, I think the criticism isn't so much that you're approaching the person. I think it's how you're trying to restore. And even biblically, I think the Bible makes it clear when you're going to someone who's a believer versus when you're going to someone who's a non-believer. And I think those approaches have to be different. When you're going to someone who's a believer, they should know that what they did is wrong. And particularly if they are trying to negate accountability or trying to avoid consequence, I do think you do need to be a little bit more blunt. You do need to be a little bit more straight honest about the sin that they have committed or the wrong that they're doing. When you're going to a non-believer, I think your approach needs to be different. I mean, one, you don't have the presumption that they know that what they did is wrong. But two, I just feel like love over sin is more important during those situations. And so instead of focusing so much on, oh, this is why you're not going to heaven, which we can't even make that, that statement, but that's what gets said is, oh, this is why you're heathen, is why, even though we're all in that situation. But I think it's kind of like dieting. It's easier to focus on what you should eat versus focusing on what you can't eat. If you go to that non-believer, you're so focused on what they can't do, then you're not giving them the hope and the space and the love that is encompassed when you do focus on what you can do, or do focus on the showing of self grace and mercy to others. So I just think
I think the key part of that is recognizing and remembering our own situation. It was like I was had a conversation with another friend who's really one of these really far right kind of people who I really got to get some better friends. Well, you have to have those kind of friends because you really need to understand. I think in order to be able to dialogue with someone and to be able to love them in their nonsense, you have to have some type of empathy and understanding of where they're coming from, why they believe the things that they believe. And I think it's so easy for us to dismiss people without actually coming to understand why is it that they believe something. He sent me a video earlier this week. It was on Rumble. And the video said something to the extent, the left must think that God is blind and dumb. And he starts this video out by saying the left hates God. Anything that God likes, that left hates, and they want, and the only thing they want you to do is they want you to be free to choose. I mean, free to be able to sin. That's the only freedom they want you to have. They want you to be able to be free to sin however you choose to. And as I was listening to it, I said, it would do well for him to sit down and listen to somebody who is a Democrat or who is a liberal and understand what their perspective is. Because right now you're spewing off and you have no idea what their perspective is. Just because somebody says, I'm voting so that another person can have the right to choose this doesn't mean that I support the right. That doesn't mean that I support the choice. You can support the right to choose without supporting the choice itself. But because he's so monolithic in his perspective and hasn't taken time to really sit and listen to somebody to find out what motivates their actions, then you're quick to dismiss them. And so having these conversations with these people who are called friends that have some pretty extreme views and sometimes pretty kooky views, and I'll tell them that they're kind of kooky, so I'm not talking about them necessarily behind their back. I'm telling like, dude, your mind is way off. You're way off on this situation. But sitting down and talking to them, you start to understand why they think a certain kind of way, and then perhaps you can then hopefully gently nudge them back into some level of sensibility if it's possible. But it takes work to be able to do that. It takes time to be able to do that. It takes patience to be able to not convert people in the sense of converting them, but to help change some of their thinking, and maybe even in the process have some of your thinking enlightened and or changed in the process too. But you can't have community with people who you don't sit down and talk to. You can't have community with people who you don't sit and listen to and try to respect their positions on these things, and have some empathy when they mess up. Have some empathy to the fact that, guess what? You were once a sinner too. And I guess the context of this, that conversation with this friend was that we were talking about, of course, politics. He was saying, you can't be saved and vote for a Democrat, is what he's saying. I'm like, okay, it doesn't have anything to do with my salvation. But I said, what do you think? We look throughout the scripture, and the Bible talks far more about how we treat the poor, how we treat the widow, and how we treat the foreigner, those people who are coming around us. He's much more concerned about how we treat people in our communities. And I was referencing to him multiple scriptures that said, where God said, treat the foreigner just as your neighbor, as you would, as if he was a native, as if he was a person who was, your brother. Treat them that way. But you start looking at one party that seems to say, I'm going to oppress the stranger. I'm certainly not going to treat them like they're my neighbor. They certainly cannot become part of my community. But yet, there are multiple scriptures that say do that. And then here you go, you wind up on the other end, your whole premise of salvation is based on your support for one or two scriptures that support your ideology about killing babies. I'm like, God said, okay, this. But what about the community that God is really trying to get us to establish and trying to get us to foster? The community where we lift each other up, the community whereby we provide some for them. And interestingly, he said, these people are coming into the country and they're stealing all of our stuff from us. They're stealing our social services. I said, the scripture said that when you go and harvest, he said, don't reap it all. He said, leave some for the poor, for the widow, and for the foreigner who comes into your land. So I told him, I said, if you leave some there for your neighbor or this foreigner who now should be treated as your neighbor, how can they be stealing from you? The only reason why you can view them as stealing from you is that you haven't extended yourself and given of your own benefit and given of your own harvest to be a benefit to other people. And I think that's lacking in community right now, is that we don't want to give of ourselves and give of our first fruits or give of our harvest and our abundance to be able to help somebody that we don't know, let alone, to help somebody that we do know, let alone somebody we don't know.
Well, first of all, I think we both agree that, if you are blessed, you should be a blessing to others. And when we're talking about Christian, our God wants us to be of service. He's not necessarily concerned about you satisfying your own personal worldly desires. He wants you to be of service to others. But I think some of the question, or at least part of the question is, at what point should we not insert ourselves? Or is there a point where, okay, there is helping to ensure someone's success, and then there's helping because you believe someone is in danger? Like if I look at the Carlee Russell situation, to me, my first, let's say some of that was true. Again, police are saying otherwise, but let's say that there was a toddler walking. For me, my first thing is, let me call 911.
Well, she called 911. She did.
Yeah. So that's first and foremost, as well as then, I may try to find someone who could be more self-help. I'm not saying, go rush out and find the toddler. And if that is what you choose to do, there's nothing wrong with that. I guess what I'm also saying is, I'd imagine there are some instances, because when you look at like a store policy, like a Walgreens or CVS, they will tell you, if someone comes to rob this store, you do not pull out your gun and protect yourself or try to protect the other patrons. If you do, you will be fired. And we have seen instances where store clerks or associates will protect themselves with the weapon if someone tries to rob, and they are subsequently fired, because
bus drivers. And
they are subsequently fired. But even, when I think about all these open carry laws, I feel like, again, you have some of these states, and I think we talked about this too, of having, was it Nikki Haley saying she didn't think there should be any, no gun areas where you can't have a gun or whatnot. And some of that is, people want to go and be that vigilante. They want to go, and if there is a shooting taking place, I don't care if it's a school, I don't care if it's a grocery store, whatever, they want to feel like, I've got my gun, I can go and charge into the situation and help save the patrons there. Or, I see someone who is disputing, even verbally, I can go and confront and say, hey, you need to leave her alone, and pull out your gun. I think there is a line. And I think that takes it. That's why I have concern about the open carry, because I feel like it then creates for people this sense of, okay, now I can go play hero, and it could cause way more harm than good. And so I do think there is some instances that perhaps this isn't your fight. You shouldn't go insert yourself. But I'd imagine some people may say, no, that's why we've got these Good Samaritan laws.
Kyle Rittenhouse, for example. Let's talk about Kyle Rittenhouse. His whole thought was, or at least what he alleged was, I'm ready to come out and I'm going to help the people in my community protect their property. Is that a justification for it? And, is there ever a time when you should be ready to take arms to help your neighbor? And and where's the line drawn? Is this a genuine concern to help your neighbor, or is it just that you wanted to get out there and unleash some frustrations on a bunch of Black people who you believe are terrorizing the neighborhood? It's not even your neighborhood, first of all, in his case, but he got off of that. He got off because people thought, hey, he was there to help protect people. and help them protect their
Even if
property.
it's because even in that, to me, if there is a genuine concern, but I imagine other people differ. If there's a genuine concern that you would, then you are mindful of how you go execute that. And from my standpoint, we were talking about Kyle Rittenhouse. Yeah, he'll say, "Oh, it was a genuine concern," and we're saying, "No, people were walking the other way. You just shot your rifle randomly at peace, not only a peaceful protest, but a situation where it was kind of getting the police were there, was already kind of getting disbanded. You go and just charge in the situation to escalate something that had already began to de-escalate. If it was an escalation to begin with, and so." To some degree, I imagine, again, will be people that will say, well, that's still, if you feel like and you've got a gun, you should help. I'm like, no, you should, one, ask yourself, what will be the best method to help, to ensure that it is a genuine helpfulness. But two,
The answer might be to use my gun.
but two, I'm with you. You do have to, and that's obviously with any choice any choice you have to decide, hey, is this a choice that I am being asked to make, or is this something that God is calling me to make? Is this something that I'm just trying to do to pacify what I feel like is best? Or is this what's best based on more information, or based on more logic and reasoning, or spiritual, if that's where we are. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm still like, I agree, community is important, but community also, can be a hindrance. I mean, you look at gangs as well. I mean, that was their thing.
Look at what? I'm sorry?
Gangs. And by gangs, I really mean like the whole Bloods, the Crips, those
gangs.
type of, those violent gangs. It started, and I should say started, but a lot of times you have people that join because they feel a lack of acceptance, or they don't have certain resources at home, or they don't feel like they have people that care. And so that's how they lure you in. But, and you can argue, well, at least then they have a group of people that now are caring for them. And they know, they're
protecting them.
Yeah, protecting. But to what end? That these group of people are now teaching them to be violent members of society, teaching them that, hey, if someone messes with your fellow gang member or your fellow brother, you go out and put your own vigilante to get justice for your brother. and that's, I mean, they that's their sense of community, but is that helpful?
Some aspects is helpful. Like I guess I can probably think of like my line brothers when we pledged, and some people may criticize the way that we were pledged or whatever, but what was top priority for us?
I'm sure CAP is a no hazing corporation.
Of course, exactly. We don't haze, we motivate. We just motivate. And the way that we were pledged, I thought was perfect for because the emphasis was always on altruism, your unselfish devotion to the welfare of another. There is no doubt in my mind that if one of my line brothers saw me getting ready to take a fall, take a punch, well, maybe they won't take a bullet. But they will take a punch from me.
But I will ride and feel.
I'm your ride and live brother. But there's no doubt in my mind that these brothers have my back. When shortly after we pledged, my father died, and my father and brother died in a boating accident. And man, I was lost at that moment. And I remember one time I was just so low that I didn't even know what was going on at this moment. I called somebody. I think I must have called one of my sons and was talking to him, and I must have been talking some gibberish. It didn't make any sense or whatever. And then I got off the phone pretty abruptly. And next thing I know, he wound up calling 2 or 3 of my other sons. And before I know it, they are downtown at my place saying, hey man, you just didn't even sound right on the phone. And when you have that level of camaraderie, when you have that level of community, there's no substitute for that. And I think that's lacking. And I think it actually contributes to, I think, some of the depression that people are feeling today, and particularly with a lot of young people, because they see there's so much opportunity to isolate yourself. Everything is online. You got Facebook and social media. You don't need to really even have friends and social interaction and community in this regard. And we saw what happened during the pandemic when people were isolated from human interaction. There's something just important about that human touch and proximity to somebody, to know that you are not by yourself, that helps to maintain your sanity. And when that becomes lacking, then people become more insane and their behaviors become more irrational, unpredictable. And then I think that's why you're starting to see this rise in these mass shootings, and people are just being hateful because I think the lack of community and surrounding of people, not just the sharing of the love, but also the sharing of the resources, the sharing of the accountability, the sharing of the protection. There's so many things that community offers that when it's lacking, you have problems. You have serious mental problems when you don't have access to those things.
Yeah, but you have to be mindful of the right community. And one, I did want to shout out to my now soror Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, and was doing
He
the
just became, and now all of a sudden you want to claim her all of a sudden real quick.
Doing the community of smart and beautiful young Black women. But yeah, I mean, I to me, that the whole goal and purpose of it, and I'm sure it's the same with your fraternity, is about community service. It's about, political action, particularly when you see people who are oppressed. It is about making sure that you are helping and building up a strong sisterhood or a strong brotherhood of your own people, or the community within there. And so those mantras or those mission or objectives are definitely more positive, versus if you join a community of people who are about the oppression, like white supremacy, who, again, Senator Tuberville doesn't realize is a oppressive organization. But the white nationalists, whatever, I mean, they could break that same argument. Hey, it's about the community of making sure white people are the superior being. It's about the community of making sure affirmative action programs are not hindering the success of white people. It's about the community of, hey, we don't want certain people in our neighborhoods, certain people being what Trump calls Mexicans who are rapists, murderers, and the like, right? And so, in that vein, to me, that's why it's so important. Okay, what's the mission? Because that is one of the Congress has made it clear, the most terrorist organization is white supremacy. They are by far more harmful to the United States than on Al-Qaeda or, any of that other stuff. And yet they become the most protected in so many instances. And so, I mean, even again, the number one song right now, or soon to be number one song, is a country artist talking about lynching. And that's the community. That's also the community of America that we are in. And I'm just saying there are times, and perhaps the question then it becomes, should you either be obligated to help your brother and sister for the better, meaning should your state have laws that say, hey, if you see someone who is being either abused or the like, and you do nothing, should you be prosecuted for that? And we know in certain instances, like teachers, if they see someone or have evidence of abuse and they don't say anything, they could be prosecuted, or they could be, terminated or suffer consequences. We saw in Uvalde, when some of those police officers decided to run away instead of going in to help protect some of those kids. Some of them lost their jobs, but their public opinion, they're being prosecuted to some degree. And so I guess my question is, hey, should we then, if we recognize community is so important for the benefit of people, should we then have laws that require you to be in community with each other in that same vein?
I don't know that we have the laws for it, but we're having the economy for it. I was having another conversation with somebody else, and they were talking about how just expensive it is to live these days. And I said, I think the one benefit of having really a high cost of living is one that you can't, it's hard to be single and live by yourself, of course, unless you got an income like yours. And
Not at all. It's hard. My friends check on me sometimes.
Exactly. By check on me, I mean write a check on me.
Oh no.
But yeah, it's difficult for people who make an average wage to be able to live in Nashville. It's crazy expensive to live in there, and but a lot of times people wind up finding themselves dependent on another person to be able to live. And I think on some level that's a good thing, because it's teaching us that community is still important. We do need each other to survive. We do need each other to thrive, not just survive, but also to thrive. And it forces you sometimes to be able to be friendly with and or cordial and interactive with people who you might not have otherwise been involved with. You might have easily have isolated yourself if you didn't have the necessity to it. I had spoken to one of my aunts before. She said, you know, I probably would not have stayed married as long as we had stayed married if we had stayed in the community of where my family was. But because when we were in a whole different city, the only person that I had to actually stay around with was really my husband. And so those times when we were fighting and when we disagreed, not fighting, but when we disagreed and I was really mad at him, or he might have been mad at me, we would say, where are you going to go? And it's not from an abusive standpoint, but from a standpoint to say that, you know, it's not so easy to walk away from community when you know that community is helpful to you, when you know that community is providing a benefit for you. And if that community is not providing the benefit for you, then it's a little bit easier to walk away from it.
But even in that example, I mean, hey, community could have kept them married even longer. You know, I mean, I hate to think that, oh, if I had my community there, I would have left my husband. No, hopefully if you had your community there, they would have ensured to help you stay together. I mean, I definitely believe a community helps keep a marriage just as much as a community helps raise kids. And so when you have that help or assistance, one, hopefully you'll have people that then help your spouse and help you understand that perspective. So that, you know, you don't think of it as, oh, this person is harming me, but perhaps maybe this person doesn't understand me or doesn't recognize that, hey, my love language is this, and you're so focused on this over here that you're missing my love language. And so I would hope from that for your friend that she sees community more so as something that can keep her or help her keep her commitments versus allow her to escape those commitments.
So the other thing about this economy right now is that I start seeing the benefit that a lot of people who immigrate to this country, they have multiple generations of families in the same household. And that was happening long before the housing market went out of control. It was still happening. They understood the benefit of pooled resources. They understood the benefit of shared burdens. And I think there's a scripture that says many hands make burdens light or something like that. And it really does. You know, that burden that you're feeling that seems to be that could be overwhelming and that could just totally annihilate you and your sanity wouldn't be yours alone to bear if you had an appropriate community to help shoulder some of that stuff. And so whether it's a financial burden, whether it's an emotional burden, or whether it's a spiritual burden, all of those things are shared when you have a community who is willing to help upgrade you under that. And so as I was listening to Pastor Jamal Bryant, in fact, I actually posted it on my Facebook.
Unfortunately, because I watch Housewives, I know him as Pastor something else, but go ahead.
Well, I'll ask you offline what that pastor something else is. But he was saying something. He said only 8% of Black people in America are homeowners. And he said we understood that home ownership, and this may be a little bit off subject, but I'm going to bring it back in together somehow. But he was like, home ownership and passing that on to generations after generation is one of the quickest ways to end, and one of the best ways to end generational poverty and to pass on transgenerational wealth is home ownership. But only 8% of Black people actually own a home. And so when you get rid of the affirmative action, he was saying that the affirmative action, oh gosh, I wish I could remember exactly how he put it together. But he was saying that that getting rid of affirmative action then itself had some impact on being able to stop Black home ownership, which then kept us in an impoverished state. You have to look that YouTube video up. But I guess the way that what made me think about it was the fact that if we actually pooled resources and we actually weren't so quick to get our children out of the house, and we said, okay, yes, I still have space for my child to live with me, And I'm not, and that's happening more frequently now, especially in this economy. Heck, I've got my 26-year-old son who's living with me, and I'm not trying to push him out the door because I know
You're
what's
not.
out there. I'm not trying, I'm not really.
Just
My mind, when he first came back, I was thinking like, yeah, okay, this is going to be a short-term type thing. But, and I start looking at the cost of living. I'm like, well, how can you do this? I'd like to see him out on his own, but I don't want to see, no, I don't want to see him out on his own. I'd like to see him with a roommate, because I understand the importance of being able to have community. I don't want you living by yourself, because when you're living by yourself, there are too many opportunities for isolation and for annihilation to follow after that. And so you have to have some level of community. And if you're not the kind of person that's going to go out and initiate interactions with other people, at least you have a small core of people who you know you can depend on, and hopefully you have a roommate who you know that, hey, this person is here for me, is here for my good. Now, granted, some people will get into roommate relationships and hate each other.
Well,
but you need each other because you got to pay that rent.
Well, boys is usually different too. But I will say, you know, and it's going to pose an interesting question. One, I did want to acknowledge Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson. I don't know why I was thinking Jackson, but Magic Johnson is now has some ownership, and I think it's in the Challengers or some NFL team. And he's gotten the ownership. It's not an individual ownership. He's part of a group. So again, that community. So he's part of a group that pooled their resources, and that group has the ownership of the NFL team. But nonetheless, as we talked about before, the NFL is one of those that is successful off 90% of Black people because they're the players, while the ownership is pretty much 100% white, right? And so, you know, we see it in that vein, that community. But my question is then, do you feel like integration hurt us? Because when we talk about segregation, you know, a lot of times people will say, but I mean, the community that we had is what enabled us to make sure our schools were still good. I mean, we still had a lot of Black-owned businesses. And again, you had your neighborhoods where, yes, on one end of the street might have been a doctor or a lawyer, and the other end of the street might have been someone who was more of an entry-level position. But yet we were all in the same street. And so the kids can see, oh, I can be, you know, all types of careers because I'm exposed to it, versus once integration happened, then we separated ourselves more so because for whatever reason. But nonetheless, so then do you feel like integration ruined our sense of community?
I don't think so. Well, I don't think integration itself did it. Because integration is necessary, especially when you, for no other reason other than resources, not just financial resources, but even educational resources. There are so many things that I've learned just from interacting with people who don't look like me from a business standpoint that never would have been taught in my community, never would have been taught in my community. But now that I have that information, I can go back into my communities and I share it with everybody who I talk with. For example, cost segregation for investment properties. Any Black person I know trying to, you know, get into real estate, I'm like, listen, you need to know about cost segregation and how it benefits you. That's nothing that that would have ever really have heard in the Black community. Actually, I learned it from a Black doctor friend of mine, but he learned it from some of his other white colleagues.
Eventually,
but the point is that some of these things were never taught to us. I mean, some of those things were intentionally kept from us as a community. And now without integration and without having some of those allies and neighbors who actually have access to these things and are willing to share these things, the knowledge that we never really would have had those. Now, the problem is that it's not integration that caused the problem. It's actually our own intentional segregation from our people. That's the bigger problem right there. You can integrate with other people and bring other people into your family without you leaving the family itself and going to join somebody else's.
Well, so in
that's a whole other topic.
I'm just saying, because in that, and we will save it for on the topic, because in that vein, yes, you gain something, but you lose something. So is it worth it? And that's, I guess we'll pick up on that at another time. But thank you guys so much for tuning in, and please weigh in on what we talked about. You know, one, if you believe community is important, do let us know if there are any downfalls to community, but also let us know why you feel it's important and what ways we can do to ensure that such community continues, so that, again, we're not entering this next generation as people who need to be prepared to handle depression versus people who should be prepared to be more communal and more helpful for others. But you can catch us here every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Also catch a repeat of this episode on Star Radio, and go to your favorite podcast platform and watch some of our old episodes. Until next Saturday.
We're also on YouTube.
Yes,
Yes,
we are
also
on
on
YouTube.
Yes.
So do check us out on YouTube, share, subscribe, like all the beautiful stuff that is so valuable from our community of people that listen to us. Please galvanize this community, continue to spread and share this Roundtable Consult platform. Until next Saturday, thanks so much for tuning in.